This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, guys, good morning, and let's get started. Let others join as we move on. So we have been discussing the networking topics, right? And within the networking, today we are going to cover something called as route tables or routing tables. And we did had a brief discussion about this in our earlier class, right? So we'll continue with a scenario, and then we'll move into a different topic if I am allowed. Okay, so that's what the agenda for today is, right? So to start with, what exactly a route table is, this is what we discussed in our earlier class as well. But to recap, uh, as we all know that there is a requirement where you may have to route the traffic through a specific subnet or through a specific device and so on, right? So in our real-time environment, what we also have something called as static routes, right? So you may have to put some routes in place so that the traffic will go in a specific routing path or route path rather, right? Now that's where you go and define some static routes at OS level or at even within route at the network level as well, right? So your route table basically defines how the traffic should flow between the different subnets or between the virtual machines within different subnets, right? That's what your route table will define. Now, by default, when you create a virtual network, you will have multiple subnets part of it, right? So that's what we discussed. Let's see. When you have multiple subnets part of it, then what will happen is you may have to have a requirement where the traffic between the subnets should flow in a certain format or certain path. Now, by default, there is something called as default route path, right? So, which means that subnet A will be able to communicate subnet B will be able to communicate subnet C, and subnet C will be able to communicate subnet A. That means that there will be a default routing path which will get created when you create a virtual network and when you create a subnet within them, right? So that is a default one. But if you want to change this routing path to a specific in a specific way, then you go and use something called as a route table. In route tables, you define, okay, subnet B, the traffic should always go through subnet A itself. Or subnet C, the traffic should always go through subnet A itself. That means that there is no direct communication between subnet C and subnet B. That's what you are trying to avoid. So why does this situation, why could be this scenario? Let us say that there are few monitoring devices, right? And within the subnet A, let us say that you have some monitoring devices, network monitoring devices. Now, any traffic that which flows in the network should always go through these monitoring devices, which are here. Which means that all the traffic should flow from subnet A to certain devices. And then it should reach to subnet C. So there is no direct communication between B and C. Vice versa, which means that subnet C trying to communicate with subnet A, then it should also pass through the same channel. Right? Now for that, what we are going to do is we are going to go and create something called as route tables, and within route tables you create something called as rules or paths. Route rules are route paths. Now these rules or paths will define, okay, from XXX subnet, the traffic should go through this particular appliance or through this particular device in subnet A, right? That's what we are going to go and see. Okay. Now for our what do you call it as lab, so what we will be doing is we are going to go and let me open a new file. We are going to go and create a virtual network, right? We call it as VNet1, and which will have an IP address range of 10.0.0.0/16. This is your virtual network IP. And this virtual network will have multiple subnets. Let us say that you have subnet A, subnet B, and subnet C. Right? These are the three different subnets which you create. Now the subnet A will have an IP range of 10.0.0.0/24. Okay, this is the IP range. And subnet B will have 10.0.1.0/24. Right, this is for your subnet B. And you will also have another subnet which is called a subnet C, which will have an IP range of 10.0.2.0/24. Right? So these are your virtual network and subnets are. And each these subnets have got their virtual machines. Let us say that this is a firewall. This is a device which captures the traffic of the traffic whatever is flowing between the network. This is an appliance, okay, that you have in subnet A. You have another appliance in subnet B, which is nothing but another virtual machine here. Let us think so, and another virtual machine. And let us name this as VM1. Let us name this as VM2. Let us name this as VM3. Right? Now let us say that virtual machine 2 in subnet B is trying to communicate with subnet virtual machine 3 in subnet 3. The requirement is all the traffic should go through this channel itself, which means that through VM1 only it should go. Or let us say that this particular virtual machine is trying to communicate with this one, then also it should go through this channel. So whatever the traffic that which is flowing between any subnet should go through this appliance, that what you have. Okay. Now this VM, whatever you have, will have an IP address of 10.0.0.4. This VM, whatever you have here, will have an IP address 10.0.1.4, and this what you have here will have an IP address 10.0.2.4. And by default, if you are not creating the routes, all these machines will be able to communicate with each other without any restriction as such, right? But what will happen is when you try to ping these, they will ping. But when you go and put a route in place, they will ping in a different way, which means that the route will be going through the subnet only. Now by default routes will be there, which means that anything can communicate with anything, right? That's how it will happen. Okay. Now what is that which is needed on virtual machine? So I want to make this as a special device, right? VM1. Now for that, what we'll do is, here we install something called as routing and remote access. We'll install something called as routing and remote access. Which means that this will act as a router, right? This will act as a router. And we also configure something called as IP forwarding here, right? We'll also configure something called as IP forwarding here. We'll also configure IP forwarding for this particular virtual machine. We'll also configure the IP forwarding. So what we are going to do, we are going to create a route which passes all the traffic from subnet B through this device, which is nothing but 0.0.4, or whatever the traffic you get from subnet C will also pass through this device, which is 10.0.0.4, right? That's what we are going to do, right? Let us quickly get into there. So before we go there, let us look at the default configuration. Okay, so the default configuration is, what is the host name of this? VM3. So by default, VM3 should be able to communicate with VM1 and VM2, right? So let us ping 10.0.0.0.4, which is your VM1. It is pinging, right? Let us ping 1.4, which is VM2, also pinging, right? So VM3 is able to ping with VM1 and VM2, right? And similarly, VM2 should be able to ping with VM1 should also be able to ping with the other two, right? Let's ping 10.0.1.4 is pinging, right? This is VM2. Now let us go to VM4, VM3, right? This is 4.4 is a VM, 2.4 is VM3, right? What is the other one left? The other one, right? What is the host name? VM2. Let us ping VM1 10.0.0.4 pinging, right? And let us ping VM3 as well, right? Ping 10.0. Right? 2.4 will also ping. So by default, all these machines are able to communicate with each other because there are something called as default routes. Now we want to remove this default route and make sure that the route is the traffic is flowing through a specific route. That's what we are trying to attain here. Okay, right. Let me go to the Azure portal and create something called as route table. Right, table. Now within this route tables, you can add your own route table here. How do I do that? Go and click add. Right, by default, any resource that which will be there in the network, it's also asked in Azure, like whatever the resource you create, it will also ask a name. Let us say that routing table or demo RT. That will put that. Now this has to fall into a resource group. I'll go and put it in RRG, which is routing resource group, and I'll create that in Central India. Okay. Now you just created a routing table. Now what you need to do is you need to go and define the routes in that. Right? You need to go and define the routes in that. Now for that, you go to the routing table, what you created, and go to the routes. So here in the routes, you will be able to add your required routes. Right? Now what are my required routes? My required routes are traffic coming to subnet B, traffic coming from subnet B should go through a virtual appliance in subnet A, which is nothing but 10.0.0.4, right? That's what we are going to do. Now let me go and create a route. Click on add, right? Let us say that some route 1. Now what is the address prefix from where the traffic is coming? So my traffic is coming from a subnet B, and the address prefix of that one is 10.0.1.0/24. That's what we are going to go and write here. 10.0.1.0/24. Okay, this is the source. But when a traffic is coming from here, so what is the destination through which, what is the device through which the traffic should flow? So here the traffic should flow through a router, which is nothing but my VM, and the IP address of that VM is 10.0.0.4, right? Now, because this is a router, we call it as virtual appliance. So you can go and select the next hop, which means that next path that which this particular subnet should look for is a virtual appliance with an IP address of 10.0.0.4, which is nothing but your router. Okay. So now what did you do here? You go and specify, you went and specified, okay, any traffic coming from subnet B, which is nothing but 10.0.1.4/24, should pass through a router, which is nothing but a virtual appliance, and the router IP address is 10.0.0.4, right? That's the first route, right? So you are done with subnet A to the communication, subnet A to subnet A to subnet VM1 in subnet A, right? That is the route you created. This is done. Now let us go and create another one for this one, right? Subnet C to again VM1, right? Subnet C to VM1. Let us go and create one more route. Let us call it as route 2. Route 2. Now, what is the IP address of that? Address prefix 10.0.0, 10.0.0, 10.0.0.2.0/24, right? That's what it is. 10.0.2. Right? 10.0.2.0/24. That's what you are giving here. Now again, this traffic should also go through some appliance, and that appliance IP address is 10.0.0.4, which is nothing but your firewall or router appliance. We call it as router because we are configuring it as router. It can be any other device also, right? It can be a firewall, it can be a traffic capturing some device, whatever captures or reads the traffic, whatever. Now you went and created two routes. One route which says, okay, traffic moving from subnet B should go to virtual machine 1, 10.0.0.4, and traffic moving from subnet C should also go through a virtual appliance, which is again 10.0.0.4. So we created these rules, right? We created the rules. But subnet B and subnet C should know that, right? We haven't told subnet B that, okay, there is a route and go and use it. You haven't told subnet C there is a route, you go and use it, right? That's where you are going to associate these things, right? You go to the subnet and associate those routes that which you created. Now, what are those routes which are created? We created two routes. And to which subnet we want to apply them? We want to apply them to subnets in VNet1, which are nothing but subnet 2 and subnet 3, right? Subnet 2 is nothing but subnet B. Go and associate it. And we'll also associate that to the other subnet within virtual network, VNet1, right? Let me go and associate VNet1, and then select the subnet, subnet 3, right? Now you associate it. So B is nothing but 2, C is nothing but 3, and subnet A is nothing but subnet 1. Okay, instead of A, it is 1, 2, 3. Okay, whatever that. Right, so we associated these routes to our subnets, right? correct? Route 1 and route 2 are associated. Now subnet D knows, okay, boss, I should go only through this route because there is a rule specified. And subnet C also knows I should only go through this route because there is a rule specified, right? Let us go and try to ping and see what happens, how they are, how the communication is, right? So we are in VM2, right? Let us try to ping VM1. It is pinging, but when I ping VM2, VM3, right? 2.4 is VM3, it doesn't ping, right? We are pinging this VM to this VM, it doesn't ping. Similarly, if you try to ping from this VM to this VM, it will also not ping, right? Let us go to VMC, VM3, and try to ping VM2. It will not ping. The reason it doesn't ping because we haven't configured a routing and remote access feature on VM1, and we haven't configured IP forwarding. So what it means is the traffic is reaching here, but this device is not able to forward the IP traffic to the other device because you don't have a solution within this device which does that particular activity. To have that feature enabled, what we are going to do in our lab is we are going to go and install something called as routing and remote access on VM1, and we'll also put something called as IP forwarding, which means that whatever the traffic which is coming to this VM will be forwarded, right? That is another feature that which we need to enable, right? So let us go and install a routing and remote access on VM1, right? So this is my VM1, right? This is my VM1. Now on this VM1, I'll go and install something called as Windows routing and remote access. Right? Add features and roles. The next. Now here you go and select something called as remote access, which basically installs a software router, which means that this machine that what we are using, we are converting into something called as router. Now for that we need a feature called as routing. That's why I'm selecting this routing, and then whatever the dependencies that it will install, and then go and install this particular role. Okay, so you are converting this Windows machine into a router to simulate the environment, right? But in real time, this will be an appliance which could be a Cisco router, or which could be a firewall, which could be kind of some network capturing devices and so on, right? So to simulate, what we are doing is we are going to use a Windows machine and installing a routing and remote access role on that to convert that Windows machine into a router. Okay, the simulation. Right, so let this installation complete. Once the installation is done, then we have to go and configure this one, right? We have to go and configure this role. Right, let that get installed. So once the installation is completed, then we have to go and enable IP forwarding on the network interface card of this particular virtual machine, right? So that's what we will be doing after completing this configuration of routing and remote access. Now, if you have any other router that which you can use, you can appliance router, you can also use that, right? So we have some other solutions around that, so you can also use that. Now we installed routing and remote access on this one. We need to go and configure it, right? Now, how do I configure it? Go to routing and remote access console within Windows, right? So this is not yet configured. That's the reason you see it as the service is not yet started. Now here you go and configure routing and remote access. Say next. Now what does I need? I need a custom configuration here, right? So I need a custom configuration. I'll go with custom configuration. Now what type of custom configuration is needed? I need a LAN routing, right? Because I am configuring a routing solution. That's the reason I am going with LAN routing. And then finish it. Now this will start the service on your server. So which service it will start? Routing and remote access service, which means that this machine will now act as a router. So whatever the traffic that which will come to this particular machine, it will able to read, right? So it is starting the service. Let it start. Let it start, right? So it starts the service. Right? So your routing and remote access service is up, which means that this device VM1 here will act as a router now. But we need to go and enable something called as IP forwarding to transfer the traffic or to forward the traffic, right? So for that, what we need to do is we need to go to the network interface card of this particular virtual machine, right? Now let me go to the virtual machines. Go to VM1. And then go to the networking. Go to the IP, go to the network interface card of this particular virtual machine. Right, this is the network interface card. Go to the network interface card, and you see there an option called IP forwarding. Right, go to IP configuration. So IP forwarding is the setting that which by default it will be disabled. So what we do is we go and enable that particular setting. So this has to be done on the network interface card of the router of the machine where you configure the routing and remote access, which basically forwards the traffic, right? Right. So what did we do? We configured a routing and remote access solution on this, which acts as a router, which means that it should be able to read the traffic whatever is coming from subnet C and subnet B. But to forward the traffic, we also enable something called as IP forwarding on our virtual machine, right? That's what we did. Let us go and look now whether these machines will be able to communicate with each other or not, right? It may take some time. Right? You can see this machine started communicating with the other machine. So what is this machine? This is VM2. VM2 is able to communicate with VM3. And how is that it is communicating? It is communicating through this particular router, what you have. Similarly, VM3 will communicate with VM2, which is in your subnet 2 or subnet B. And this communication is again happening through a router, right? Right, if you see this, the first hop, whatever it is picking, if you run a traceat command, what does it show? It shows 10.0.0.4, which is nothing but your router IP address. That means whatever the traffic that which is going from this virtual machine, which is a virtual machine 2 to the virtual machine 3, it is going through a machine called or a router called 10.0.0.4. That's the reason your traceat output gives you VM1 IP address, which is nothing but your router. Now it can be any other device also, as I said, right? Now again, in real-time environment, the Windows machine routing and remote access or IP forwarding, what you configured, you will not be doing it. Okay, so there will be an appliance, which could be a firewall, which could be a router, which could be any appliance, and those details you will get from your network team, and you just go and put the appliance details. When you configure here in the hop, you go and put those details there, right? So because we don't have those devices, we are using a Windows machine as a solution. Right. Go and use it. Right. Here, instead of Windows machine, we'll have some appliance. Okay. Now that's what is about the routing table or route table. Okay. So any questions in this you can ask.
I mean, we use route tables to restrict the traffic, or what? What? I mean, why do we need to use route tables exactly? In which scenarios?
Yeah. So I was saying that initially, but I'll repeat that. Okay. So a route table could be a requirement, a specific requirement for you. By default, there are routes across, right? So all the subnets will be able to communicate with each other, but you want to restrict that default communication and route the traffic through a particular channel. And that channel could be that could be the reason. There could be multiple reasons. One could be the shortest path, could be, or you want to have some monitoring mechanism because of which you want to route a traffic through a specific device in a specific subnet, right? So or there could be a situation where you don't want your traffic to be sent across multiple subnets, right? So that is the reason you go and specify something called as routes, right? To quote some examples, let us say that you have a backup server, let us think so, right? Now you don't want that backup traffic to be flowing like any other normal production net through your production network interface card, right? Generally you will have two different network interface cards. So those type you can those type of situations you can also go and specify the route table. Okay? Or static routes we call it as. At Windows level you can do it, at Linux OS level you can do it. You can also define them at at your network devices as well, right? So that those are the situations where you will come across these static routes or specific routes requirement and other stuff.
So we work on static route now. What you
We
shown in
were
static route?
no, this is kind of static route that what we configured where you are restricting the traffic right to through the a specific device. Now in our case that device is what do you call it as the router. If you want to go and write some other rules within the OS level, you can do it. But what we are covering is at the Azure level, how do we configure the route? But OS level also you can do it. You can there are certain commands through which you can go and configure add route or some command is there within the OS level. You can do it at OS level. But we are not using that at OS level. But we are saying that okay, so at the subnet level itself, you are saying your subnet that okay, use this route, which means that all the machines in that subnet will follow that route whatever you have at the subnet level. But I am not going to show anything at the OS level static route.
Okay, OS level in the sense we need to go to the particular virtual machine and we need to do in the OS, in that
Correct.
OS.
Correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Right. So this is about routing and remote access. So with this topic is over. Right. So we'll move on to our next topic, which is nothing but a load balancer. Right. Another networking topic. Now, what is a load balancer? The name itself says it balances the load. Right. So let us quickly look at a situation or scenario. Right. So let us go to our MS Paint and okay. Now you have an environment, let us say the Azure environment. In Azure, you have multiple web servers, and these web servers are nothing but a pool of web servers. Let us think, a pool of web servers, a pool of web servers. Let's think the pool of web servers. Web server 1, 2, 3, and so on. Right? Now, this pool of web servers has to be accessed or need to be accessed by your end user, right? Could be over the internet or could be on the intranet. So if it is an intranet, it will have a private IP address. If it is an internet, it will have a public IP address. Now these web servers that what you have, web server 1, web server 2, web server 3 will have your web services installed. Now for users to access this, they can directly access individual web server by using individual URL, or you can go with a common URL which binds all these three web servers, right? There will be a common URL or common IP address which binds these three particular web servers, right? Now, when you have a common URL or common IP address which binds all these three web servers, when user use that IP address or URL or whatever, it will go and hit one of the web servers, whatever you have here, right? So it may go out hit your WI1, W1, W2, or W3, right? So to balance these things, to enable or configure this feature, not necessarily for web server, for any other services as well, you have where you have multiple servers related to a specific service, and you want that services to be accessed as a single point and load balanced at the back end, then we use something called as load balance. Something called as load balance. Now, what is this load balancer will do? What this load balancer will do? This load balancer, we can have two types of IP addresses. It can have a private IP address or it may also have a public IP address. That means when you create a load balancer, you are assigning an IP address to the load balancer. So when you create a load balancer, it will ask you, boss, whether it is a public or private. Then you go and select public, which means that it will ask you a public IP address. Now, if it is private, then it will select an IP address. If your virtual network on which this device is on 10.x, it will go and select 10.x IP address. Right? Now it picks an IP address and your load balancer need an IP address. This load balancer will also have something called as backend pool. Something called as backend pool. This is your backend pool. A pool of resources to which this load balancer is configured. Nothing but your backend pool. This is our backend pool. What you are telling your load balancer is, okay, so you are having this public IP address. When somebody is accessing you through this particular public or private IP address, now you should be contacting or providing them or cater them these resources, that whatever you have. It could be a web server, it could be a RDP, or it could be anything, right? It could be anything. Now your load balancer will have a front-end IP address, or you can call it as front-end IP address. This can be called as front-end IP address. Called as front-end. So front-end IP and backend pool. Okay. Now you need to go and configure your load balancer to this backend. But till here everything is fine. But what if one of the web server is down? What if one of the web server is down? Your load balancer should be intelligent enough to identify which server is up, which server is down, which service is up, which service is down among these three, and should take a decision that traffic should not go to that web server when your web server is down. Right? That's where there is something called as health probe. There's something called as health probe, which will also come into picture. We'll also go and create something called as health probe. Health probe. So in health probe, you will be defining, or you are telling your load balancer, these are the list of VMs, okay, in the backend pool. Now go and check these VMs on so and so port. If it is a web server, it is port 80. If it is some other service, specific port number of that particular service. If it is RDP, then you go and put 3389 or any service for that matter. So your load balancer will have a public or private IP address which are front end. Will have a health probe which will go and check the health of your backend pools. A backend pool is nothing but a pool of resources. Now, what are the different types of backend pool resources that which I can assign? There are three types of resources within the backend pool you can assign to a load balancer. That can be a individual virtual machine. I'll just go and add VMs individually. Or I can add something called as availability set. We have discussed this. Availability set. Right? What is an availability set? Availability set defines the high availability of your machines using a solution called, using a feature called update domain and fault domain. What it means that you are assigning an availability set to your backend pool, which means that you are providing another high availability solution because you have your VMs in availability set. And there is one more thing called as virtual machine scale set. Virtual machine scale set. We'll discuss what virtual machine scale set is, but these are the three things that can be assigned to your backend pool. So when you create a backend pool, it will ask you, boss, is it an individual VM or individual VMs? Or is it an availability set? Then you go and select the availability set that you created. Or is it a number of machines part of your virtual machine scale set? Now, what a virtual machine scale set is? A virtual machine scale set is a solution which will increase the virtual machine count based on certain conditions. For example, here you have 3 web servers. Now you want to put a solution in place when the CPU utilization of these 3 web servers hits 90% or 80%, you want to spin an additional web server, which is W4. That can be done using a solution called as virtual machine scale set, which we will be discussing in our future classes. So virtual machine scale sets will allow you to scale your virtual machines based on certain conditions. It could be a schedule, it could be some condition like CPU memory utilization or disk IO reads and writes and so on. Or it can be a schedule only on Sunday I need 5 virtual machines or 5 web servers, right? So that can be done using virtual machine scale set. Let us go back to backend pool. So backend pool defines the list of virtual machines, a group of virtual machines. It could be individual virtual machines added, or it can be availability set, which is again a group of machines which will be providing which are highly available using a solution called availability set, where you go and define something called as fault and update domain, or it can be a virtual machine scale set, right? These are the different things that which you go and configure to your load balance. And apart from this, there is something called as load balancing rule. Load balancing rule. Now, what this load balancing rule will have, it will have a health probe, right? It will have a backend pool, and it will also have some conditions, some other conditions or settings. Or what are those settings? Let us discuss. Now, how frequently the health probe should be done? Every 5 minutes, every 10 minutes, or every 5 seconds. There is a frequency, right? Your load balancer rule will define that. Okay, so it does a health check. It finds that there is something wrong, but how many times it has to try before it takes a it concludes that there is a problem? Will it have to try after 2 or 3 attempts and take a call that okay, W1 is not responding and it is down? That's what how many times? What is the interval and how many times? After how many times it has to take a call that okay, service is down or server is down, right? Those are certain things. That's what your load balancer rule will define. Okay. So to recap, load balancer enables you to handle the backend virtual servers as a group, as a single consolidated service. Now, because you are accessing through a load balancer will have an IP address. It can be a public or private IP address. That we call it as front-end configuration or front-end IP address, because these are the IP addresses which are available to the users. That's why they call it as front-end IP address. So the load balancer will be pointing to a backend pool of resources. This pool of resources could be a number of virtual machines. And these virtual machines you can add as an individual machine, or you can add a availability set, or you can add a virtual machine scale set. Availability sets will also have a group of VMs. virtual machine skill set will also have a group of VMs. So you are adding the individual VMs, or you can add availability set or virtual machine skill set. That is backend. Now you define a health probe which will help your load balancer to understand whether the health of the backend VMs is green or red. So for which it goes and checks based on the rules whatever you defined in the load balancer rules, which is basically binding your health probe, your backend pools, and it also specifies certain intervals through which the health probe should be done and should be taken a call whether the VM is up, if it is up, and how many times it has to try to conclude that it is down if it is down, right? Now these are certain things that which are binded around your load balance, right? So let me quickly go to the Azure portal and show you those options. We will work on this lab tomorrow as the first thing. Theory part we will be covering. We had already covered today. So let me go and show that those options within the Azure portal, right? So how do I create a load balancer? Go to search and type load balancer, right? You will get an option called load balancer, right? Called. Now here you can go and add a load balancer in the portal. Right? So let me put that in a resource group, and then name I'll put as LB. Now, when you go and create a load balancer, it will ask what type of load balancer you want, whether it is internal or whether it is public. Now, if it is internal, you don't see the public IP address. When you select the public, you go and see something called as public IP address configuration option, because a public load balancer need a IP address, public IP address. If it is internal, it will select the IP address from your virtual network, right? So I'll go and select public. Now there are two types of load balancers. One is called as basic, the other one is called as standard. There is a limitation with the number of instances that which you create or use, right? So tomorrow we will see what is the difference between basic and standard. There is a table which we will be looking at. Standard will come with more features like HTTPS, which is not supported by your basic. Basic only support HTTP, right? Not a secure traffic which runs through your HTTPS. So if you want to use HTTPS, you want to go with standard. If you have more connections, more instances, then you have to again go with standard. Tomorrow we will be seeing the difference. There is a table that which I will be showing you, but today we'll go with basic. Now, if you want to have an IP address, you have to create an IP address, right? Public IP address, and that has to be a static. I don't want that IP address to be changed. So when you create a load balancer, here are the things that which it will ask, whether it is internal, external, what type of SKU. SKU stands for stock keeping unit, which is nothing but the unit, all right? So whether you want a basic or standard load balancer, where basic is a paid service, basic is a free service, whereas standard is paid service. There are additional what do you call features that which you get when you go with standard. Because I selected a public, it will ask me a public IP address, which I had created, which is called as public IP called PIP. Let me go and create a load balance, right? Review and create. Let that deployment complete, right? Then go to the load balancer. right? So you have a load balancer created. And this load balancer, because you selected as a public, will also be assigned with a public IP address, right? Public IP address will be assigned. You can see the load balancer is assigned with a public IP address. That is 104.43.241.33, which your end users will be using to access this load balancer, right? Whoever is accessing from the internet. Now this has got something called as front-end IP configuration, which we had already done. So what is our front-end IP configuration? Which is nothing but your public IP. That's what you are seeing here, right? And you have something called as backend pools, where you are going to go and add the backend pools by clicking add option here, right? So when you click on add, it will show me the different types of things that which I can associate, right? I can associate a single virtual machine. I can associate a availability set. I can associate a virtual machine scale set, right? This is backend pool, right? So you can also have something called as health probe. Health probe basically defines the health check that needs to be done, right? Conditions and other things that you can go and put it here, right? This is the health probe. Interval, right? Unhealthy threshold, after how many times it has to take a decision whether it is healthy or unhealthy, right? And you also have something called as load balancing rule, which binds your health probes and backend rules. And there is also something called as NATing. NATing is nothing but network address translation, right? So the VMs at the backend might not have a public IP address. You can access those VMs from this front-end IP address using NATing that we will be seeing tomorrow, right? Using this front-end IP address, you use NATing and access these backend VMs which are part in the backend pool. If you are an administrator, you want to access this, you can go with a public IP address, NATing, right? That can also be done using something called as NATing, inbound NATing. Tomorrow we'll see all these settings and configuration around that. So today we'll just stick to the theory part, and then tomorrow we'll see how do we configure these things. Okay. So if you have any questions, you can ask. We'll have something called as NATing. Right. This is also. So any questions you can ask me. Otherwise, I think we are done for today.
I had a question like regarding Aman. What is that cluster here? Clusters.
You are talking about Windows clusters. Is that what you are talking?
Yeah, something. Yeah, clusters.
Cluster is nothing but it's a grouping of your servers or machines. In general, it is a grouping of your servers or machines or services into a single entity, and which will help you with high availability solution. Which means that if you have a group of servers as a part of cluster, even if one server is down, your services will run using the cluster service, right? So load balancer, you can also call it as similar to your clustering feature, but it is a network related stuff, right? So if you talk specific about clustering with Windows clustering kind of thing, there are some service related or software related clusters as well. For example, if you have a SQL database, you can go and enable something called as clustering between the database servers, right? So that can also be done, right? So it is a solution which will help you with high availability of your services. Okay, any other questions, guys? Okay, so no questions means we are done for today, and we will catch up again on Monday. Okay, so Monday we are going to cover this part, and we are going to discuss very important topic, which is a theory around site to site, which is nothing but integrating your on-prem environment to Azure, right? So we'll try to see if I can get my lab working for this. Otherwise, we'll look at some other alternatives, but we are going to go and look at site to site and then point to site theory on point to site. Right, these two theory we will be discussing if time permits on Monday, along with the practical of load balancer. Okay. Now, once we are done with theory, site to site, it is kind of a little time consuming. It may take little more than whatever normal standard time, 15-20 minutes additional, but we'll try to complete it on Tuesday. Okay, so that covers most of our networking part. And there is couple of other small topics which will take another 1 or 2 days. Maybe mid of next week we'll be completing our entire. Maybe by Thursday we should be completing our entire networking. You know, networking concepts, right? Then we'll go to storage. Okay, storage is 2-3 days class. We have to understand different storage types, blobs, files, queues, and so on, managed, unmanaged, right? And then file shares and all those things we'll understand in storage. Around 3 to 4 classes. Then we'll move back to something called as identity and access management, which is our Active Directory, right? So that's what our plan is. We'll start with the point to site and site to site theory on Monday, along with the load balancer practical. Okay, right? If no questions, we are done for today. We'll catch up again on Monday at the same time. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.